My name is Mitch Benner, and we started this podcast to remove the stigma around sobriety from addiction.
My name is Aaron Nelson. Through our stories and the stories of our guests, we hope to help you find a new path.
All right, so thank you guys again for tuning in. This is Shattered Darkness, episode 2. My name is Mitch Benner, and I am here with our co-host Aaron Nelson. And today our guest is Desiree Lant. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. So Desiree is a business owner here in Northern Colorado. She owns A Better Day Cleaning. And how long have you guys been open?
8 years.
8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. And you guys do residential, commercial?
Light commercial, light office work, but mostly residential. Yeah.
Awesome. And then she also works with Blue Ribbon Home Warranty.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. Serving homeowners in every capacity possible.
Yeah. Awesome. So Desiree is an amazing person and she has quite the story. So she's agreed to come on and share her story with us.
Thanks guys so much.
Thank you. Yeah. Start wherever you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I really love what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Shedding a light on this, situation that a lot of people find themselves in, and then don't know where to go and don't think that they're all alone. So I found myself in that same spot. I started drinking when I was 14, a freshman in high school, and man, from the first time that I felt the effects of alcohol, it's like the skies opened and God was kissing me and like I was finally one of the chosen ones. And, it was pretty fun for a while until it wasn't. And when I was 15, I started going to bars. I had a fake ID and a driver's license and a car and a job.
How does that even happen?
Well, I'm from Montana.
Okay.
So there's not a whole lot to do there, especially in the winter. And it's just a very accepted practice, that everybody gets drunk.
Yeah.
So my parents weren't around. They separated, and I thought it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, have all that freedom.
Yeah.
And,
Let me ask you real quick, Montana, when does it get dark there in the winter?
In the winter?
Yeah.
Probably like 4 or 4:30, just like here.
Yeah.
In the summer, it stays light until about 11 at night.
Does that have?
Cool.
That's amazing.
Does that have any effect on it? Because we partnered with these awesome people doing Move Through the Darkness, and right now we're recording this in December, and so we're trying to get people active out and moving to, move through the darkness so they don't let seasonal depression. Was that something that you noticed or felt?
I don't even know. I feel it now. You ready for bed at 6 o'clock because it's
right.
Don't know what time it is. Yeah. But I don't know that I would be aware of any impacts that had on me. I was just a kid.
Yeah.
And I found the elixir of the gods, and that's just what I did. And, I started out being very shy, introverted, feeling like a round peg in a world full of square holes. And alcohol took that away from me. I was able to connect with people and relate to people. And then it started taking a turn, and I would do wild, way outside of my normal personality things. And, friends were not wanting to hang out with me and things like that. I'm sure a lot of people experience that.
Yeah.
But, ultimately that's my story. I became an alcoholic somewhere along the line. I crossed the line where, my friends would look at me and say, "What is wrong with you?" And I would say, "I don't know. What's wrong with you?"
Yeah, exactly. Like, nothing's wrong with me. I'm having a great time.
I'm totally fine. Yeah.
Well, let me back up a little bit.
Yeah.
You said your parents were kind of absent. They split up. How old were you when they split up?
I was 15.
15.
Yeah.
And they say absent, like they were around, right?
My mom was around.
Okay.
My mom was around. My dad worked out of town anyway, so he just kind of went out of town for a long extended period of time. And then, I'm the youngest in my family by a lot, and they were raising kids for a really long time, and they just both checked out. I was a really good kid.
Yeah.
They had no reason to think that I would make a turn. My brother and sister made very interesting choices as teenagers, and I looked like the golden child of everything. And you know, I could get away with anything because they weren't there.
And they probably didn't worry about you. And it's funny, I have a 6-year-old daughter, and she's incredible, you know, like she's so good at school and all that stuff. And so it's when she does act out, it's like very out of character for her. So so I definitely keep my hands off of her life more than I do my son. You know what I mean? So it's like I'd still speak into her life, but I'm not disciplining her as much. I'm not kind of course correcting her as much. You know, my son is a completely different story, but
yeah, isn't it weird how kids are just so different?
and they are, man. Like my kids are polar opposite. I mean, my daughter is all girl and my son is all boy. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah. And when they mesh well together, it's pretty amazing. So I was just curious too, like, cause, and then would you say it was like alcohol got introduced to you through friends? Was it kind of a party situation? Was it?
Definitely. So I went to a private Catholic high school and I was not Catholic.
Oh, geez.
So
that sounds like fun.
Yeah, it was, you know, I would go to mass and go to theology classes just like everyone else, but you know, they didn't let very many non-alcoholics get in there, but
non-alcoholics wait a minute, that's where
Catholic,
it started.
No offense, sorry for all the Catholics. It's kind of synonymous though, you know. So to get to the point, all of my circle of friends, mostly the golf team, because I golfed, they made it their mission to get me drunk at the end of the golf season because I had never been drunk before. And they were like, you're missing out. We're going to get you drunk. So that's what started it. And I remember talking to my friend because my mom is an alcoholic, but I didn't know what that meant. And so I was trying to be careful because I knew that I had that in my genes. And I asked my friend, I said, well, I need to be really careful because I might be an alcoholic. How do you know? And she said, well, as long as you don't drink by yourself, you're fine.
Yeah.
And that is how I
defined it.
Yeah. The entire time I was drinking. So
was your mom actively drinking when you were younger?
No, she had stayed dry. She didn't really go to AA. I went to a couple of AA meetings with her, and she would pick up a chip, you know, like to celebrate the anniversary.
Right. Yeah.
But that was the extent of it. She just didn't drink.
Did she ever talk about it when you were younger?
No.
Never?
Mm-mm.
That wasn't
something. She just didn't drink.
Yeah. Okay. So it was never something that was really addressed. But how did you know about it?
My dad talked to me about it. He took me out to a steak dinner when I was about 10 and said, hey, I just want to, maybe 12. I don't know. He just wanted to tell me that, you know, like people in his family, they drank, but they didn't destroy their lives. Right. And then on my mom's side, people drank, like shake the family tree and all sorts of drunks fall out, you know?
Whoa, that's my family tree too.
Yeah. So I just always, you know, once I had my first effect of alcohol, I was definitely on my dad's side of the genes. There was no way that something so awesome wouldn't be for me.
And so you felt like alcohol kind of rounded those edges off for you. You said round peg in a square
Absolutely.
world.
I did not have any friends. I didn't have, I had friends at school, but not any outside of school. Mm-hmm. So I never really knew how to relate to them. And I was always scared. Like if I talk to these people, I'm going to be embarrassed. Yeah. So I'm just not going to say anything, you know? Yeah. And then I found alcohol and I was like, everybody is so lucky to be around me.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. That definitely releases your inhibitions.
Yeah.
Was it like a fitting in thing? Like, did you try, or did you feel like you had to do that to fit in? Or were you trying to get in with those friends?
Well, that's an interesting thought. I think it was more that's what everybody in that circle did. Yeah. And I didn't have any desire to not participate. Like I wanted to participate. I hated the feeling of being around other people and speaking to other people without alcohol in my system.
Do you think before this, and I know that you're pretty young at this point, but do you think that you were struggling with anxiety? Like, do you think that was there prior to that and, depression and like a bad view of yourself?
Probably. Yeah. we already talked. I graduated high school in the 1900s, and
Don't say it like that.
So we're talking about the 80s when I was growing up. I don't remember anybody even mentioning the name anxiety or anything like that. It's just, I didn't want to be around other people because they were scary.
Yeah. So take us a little bit farther in the story. So 15, start drinking, start kind of partying with your friends. Where's it go from there?
Well, I graduated high school when I was 17. And my graduation present was essentially that I needed to move out of where my mom was at. And so I did that. And shortly thereafter, I got kicked out of myself and 3 girls. We lived together. And, they were just so mean to me and rude because my rent checks kept bouncing that they said I had to leave.
Assholes.
I know. Can you believe that?
I mean,
to me?
do you still know these people? Like, would you need to go chase them down?
No, they're gone. They're back there. But so I didn't have anywhere to go, and I moved into my 1987 Volkswagen GTI.
Jeez. And you're 17?
At this point, I was 18.
18.
Mm-hmm.
Was alcohol helping you bounce those rent checks?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. I even would cash my paycheck at the bar.
Yeah.
And I would, it's that twisted thinking that I now can see in hindsight where it's like, this time is going to be different. I can totally cash my paycheck for $97 at a bar on Friday night and have money for the rest of the week,
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was gone.
That in one night.
Yeah, in one night. And it's like, now what?
Yeah.
So I was broke. I was spending all my money on booze. Yeah.
I that thinking, you talked about that thinking. It's so funny. Like even today, like, and I'm not very far in my journey, but I was talking to somebody else about this the other day. And it's crazy how you can just trick yourself, like you'll have one good experience, right? Where maybe you have a drink, maybe you have 2. It's a good night. You don't freak out. You don't punch a hole in the wall or anything like that. And then you go back and you're like, hey, maybe I can do this. And then you do it for like a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or however long. But then eventually that cycle comes back,
Yeah.
and for me, it was verbal abuse to my family, anger, self-deprecation, a lot of that stuff, So, but it is that cycle. Like you may be able to manage it for a little while, but eventually, if you truly struggle with it, it's going to come back.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So,
indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I was between the year 18, when I was 18 to 19, I was arrested 6 times.
Jeez.
Because I had a stupid warrant out for my arrest. And
I'm sorry. That is just hard for me to imagine. You're like the sweetest human.
Oh, thank you. Sobriety looks good on me. That's for sure.
Yeah. Dude, I had a warrant for a while.
Did you?
Yeah. For a drinking ticket. Just never went back.
That's crazy.
Driving around with a warrant is the worst thing ever.
I bet.
It's not a good feeling.
No, I remember one time in college, man, driving and just all of a sudden lights out of nowhere. It was just a cop on a call or something. But you just sit there and you think like, hey, this is it. I'm going to go arrested. What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And then they drive by and it's like, ooh, let's go drink a beer.
Yeah.
Right? Oh my. So, okay, 6 times in 1 year.
Yeah.
Was it all for the warrant?
It was all for the warrant,
Yeah.
and it's such a ridiculous story about the warrant. If you want to hear it,
I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
Okay, so the night I was kicked out of the house by those mean girls, I was driving. I left and I was drunk and I drove, and it was like maybe 2:30 in the morning or something, and it was winter, and I came to a 3-way stop and slid through it, hopped the curb, and hit a bike rack.
Nice.
Okay. Couple days later at work, I was a pizza delivery driver at the time. The police officer showed up and he's talking about the damage on my car. And I was like, no, I wasn't involved in an accident. That's old damage. I had my hood tied to my bumper with a rope at the time, because money was not abundant. And, anyway, after I tried to convince him otherwise, he pulled out my front license plate from the bike rack that I had hit.
Oh, no.
And I was like, oh, I thought you meant an accident with another car. And
You're like, that's not technically an
I think you're
accident.
talking yourself into trouble. All that other hit and run.
yeah. Oops. So anyway, I can laugh about it now. When he wrote me the ticket, I just never took care of it.
Yeah.
And then I never took care of it and never took care of it. And finally, an adult came into my life and said, hey,
Maybe it's me.
you need to take care of this. And I was
Mhm.
like, oh, okay. So I did.
You didn't have to go to jail or anything, did you?
I wasn't sentenced to jail.
Okay, that's
I was
good.
sentenced to community service and all of those things
Yeah.
and alcohol classes. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I don't feel too bad. I did almost exactly the same thing, but I was too honest and I admitted it.
yeah.
So, but I drove my car off the road, and that was actually my dad's car. And I called him and I was like, hey, man, I think I just totaled your car. And so he called a tow truck, which they have to report accidents to the police.
Mhm.
So they ended up showing up at my house. And
Oh,
long
God.
story short, I was like, my dad's like, calls me back. He's like, dude, either get sober or get wasted because the cops are on their way to your house.
Oh,
Oh,
And
man.
I decided to get drunk.
Yeah.
So
Of course.
my blood alcohol content was like ridiculous.
Mm.
You know, it was like 2.2 or something like that.
yeah.
So yeah, it was crazy. But
I
Yeah.
have a fun story really quick. It's nothing to do with alcohol.
let's see.
5th grade.
I hope that this doesn't have alcohol involved in it.
No, 5th grade. Me and my buddy, we went on, I stayed at his house and we went on a little stealing spree.
Oh yeah.
And we were like going into gas stations with a dare bag and you watch the clerk like go to the back and then just fill it all up and then we literally
Just take off?
went out like not even half a block away and sat down on the park bench and started eating all the candy. So we were getting away with it. And then went to the 7-Eleven and there was a cop in like parked in front. And my buddy's like, no, we're not going to do this. I'm like, we'll be fine, dude. Come on.
You're like, we're
Go
in fifth
in
grade.
there.
No one cares.
And we're like trying to figure out a way to not talk and steal this caramello. And of course the cop saw. And so we try to steal them and the cop tells us to stand outside. You know those old 7-Elevens that have like the little mud room and then the
Mhm.
doors on either side?
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
So we're standing in there and the cop's talking to the clerk, probably if we want to press charges or not. And my buddy's like, dude, let's go. Let's bail. And I'm like, no, we're caught, man. We're caught.
Like, give him a Rolo. It'll be fine.
Yeah. And so that's when we got arrested. And the one thing I remember from that, we were driving through Main Street on Frisco. There's a 4-way stop. I'm in the back of the cop car. They handcuffed us and put us in the back of the cop car.
That's awesome.
And then we're at the 4-way stoplight. And I shit you not, my mom is at the stoplight or the stop sign, 4-way stop right there. And I peek my little head out of the cop car.
Did she see you?
She saw me and her turn signal, she was going to turn right. But I saw the turn signal turn left and follow us to
That's crazy.
like they took a mugshot and everything.
Wow.
5th grade, 65-cent caramello.
I hope.
Pretty impactful, huh?
I was gonna say, I hope if my kids ever do anything dumb that the cop does that.
Yeah.
You know what the worst part was? I had to go to a petty theft class and everybody's up there. The first thing you had to go up to the whiteboard and write down what you stole. And we're with all these high schoolers. I'm talking like stereos, $500, tires, $300.
Rolo, 1 quarter.
Caramello, 69 cents, bro.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Sorry, not to derail,
No,
but
that's-
it's a good story.
That is a good story.
Yeah.
yeah.
I've learned so much more about you every day.
Yeah, man, I started young.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
did. Criminal
Yeah.
record right there.
Dang.
So
Yeah.
anyways, so somebody comes in your life, you deal with your warrant.
Yeah, I deal with the warrant. At the time, the state of Montana was not working well for me.
Yeah.
So I ended up, I did have a high school sweetheart through high school, and his family was there for me and all of that. But he was working in the tech field in the late 90s, and he was living in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I told him, maybe I should just go to North Carolina, so I did.
Yeah.
And we were there for 3 months, ended up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is not that much fun.
A
And
lot of wind.
ended up in Denver.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's where I got sober in 2002.
2002. So how old were you at this point?
23.
Gosh, that's crazy.
I just celebrated 22 years of sobriety.
That's amazing.
Congratulations.
What's your date?
November 10th. Marine Corps birthday.
Is that yours?
December 5th is my.
Oh my gosh, not even close.
Not
Okay.
even close.
Sorry. That's awesome. To
Yeah.
22
Kind of
years.
close.
22 years.
That's
yeah.
wild. I mean, and that's crazy too to think like you basically had your whole drinking career as an adolescent
Yeah,
and a teenager.
I did.
You know.
One of the I went to a 12-step program, and couple meetings in, I met a girl who was 19.
Wow.
And she had 6 months of sobriety, and I could not wrap my mind around that.
I remember meeting a guy, he was 21. I think he celebrated his 21st birthday, by being sober. And
I don't understand that at all. Good for them.
And that, I feel like, I don't know, that young, like, we're all about extreme ownership, right? Mm-hmm. Taking personal accountability. Like, there are a lot of decisions, obviously, that you made that led you to where you're at. But, 15 years old, dude, like, I feel like part of that is not your fault, because you were just exposed to things at such a young age, to where, I think any kid in your situation would probably make similar decisions, because without the education of like, hey, this is actually kind of dangerous.
Yeah.
Being
15, hanging out with adults in a bar.
Well, and you're talking about the late 90s too, where it's like, the grunge culture, is getting extremely popular, and it's just kind of that society, like that kind of idea. So that's really interesting. So 23, get sober through, how did you do it?
I went to Alcoholics Anonymous.
You did?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was that first meeting like?
That first meeting, well, first of all, I didn't know that I was an alcoholic. I still kind of had that idea of like, that would be a terrible thing to happen to a wonderful person like myself.
Exactly right.
So I went to my first meeting, and, at first I tried to find a church. I had a really bad drunk, and I was going to end up being homeless again and getting kicked out of where I was living, and except I was in Denver this time. And I wanted to find a church, and I grabbed the yellow pages and I was flipping through, and I couldn't find a church close to our area. And the next thing I know, I'm being led to call and see when an AA meeting was.
That's crazy.
And so it was a 3 p.m. on a Sunday. And what I remember from that is there's a reason why there's Kleenex boxes around the entire meeting.
For sure.
I was devastated. I was, my world was falling down around me. I didn't know what the future held. I was scared. And I was in an AA meeting.
Yeah.
But the people there, they made me laugh.
Yeah.
They told part of their story and shared their heart. And I could not believe that people were sharing that level of vulnerability.
Had you experienced that before in your life?
It's the first place I'd ever been where people seemed like they were actually real, because they would say things and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know that you're supposed to tell anybody about that. You're just supposed to hold it inside and never tell anybody the bad things. And they had humor, and I could see that. I cried during the entire meeting. This little lady named Mary, she bought me my first big book, and she read to me, there's a passage about, but what about the real alcoholic? He's a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Totally. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yep. And she read it to me, and she goes, does that sound familiar? Sound like anybody that you know? And I couldn't even answer her because I was just bawling.
It's funny. I remember kind of a similar experience, where it was like, you're trying to figure out like, okay, do I classify myself as this or not? Mm-hmm. Because there is that stigma, right? Mm-hmm. Which we're trying to remove. But yeah, it was just, and I remember going down this list, and it was like, okay, yeah, that's me. Okay, yeah, that's me. And it's like, maybe not that one. But I get to the end and it's like 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's just kind of like,
just absolutely feeling that.
It's almost a little bit traumatic. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. It's like, now if you ask me today, it's one of my favorite things about who I am, a year into this.
That you're an alcoholic?
Yeah. Because it's provided me with clarity, the clarity. And also like, it's so hard, right? It's this dichotomy. Like, if I had to go back and do it all over again, would I? I don't know. Because there was a lot of damage and destruction that came, right? Like, I wouldn't do that again. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I wouldn't be where I'm at without it. Right. You know what I mean?
Oh, man, I would go back in a second. It was amazing.
It was
first
fun.
meeting.
Oh,
I was like, I'm sorry. I
I'm talking
misunderstood.
about going back and like repeating the whole process again
Oh,
of,
ugh.
you know, the whole 19 years old and on,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, and that's the only way that you gain any kind of credibility for something like this, you know?
Right.
Um,
Right. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where like I'm so far removed from my drinking self that it's almost like when I talk about it or think about it, I'm talking about somebody that I used to know really
Right.
well.
yeah.
Very far removed by it, but I would not be the person that I am right here, right now without all of those experiences.
Right.
And that I wouldn't trade for anything. So I'm pretty
Exactly.
proud of what I'm able to do in this lifetime.
Yeah.
You know?
It's crazy to think like you got sober at 23.
Yeah.
One more year, dude. And like, you're right at that thing where half your life,
Mhm.
almost more than half your life has been sober.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
It's amazing. I can't, you know, the time is so elusive. It has gone so fast,
Yeah.
but like my day one of sobriety, which was my first meeting, you know, if somebody would have sat there and said, you will have 22 years of sobriety, I don't know if I would have stayed sober through that day.
Yeah.
Because that is such a big ask.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at it at its
Yes.
face value.
Yes.
For
And
sure.
in the early days, all I wanted to do was drink.
That's a good point.
All I wanted to do was drink. And I was just hanging on for dear life, just going back to meetings, not drinking in the moment and trying to figure it out.
You know, and let me ask you a question, because your life is at that point kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
You know, like I think if it's probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, but was it highly stressful time, a lot of anxiety, like a lot of fear. Those are all reasons that that drive people to the bottle, right?
Mhm.
Like, how the fuck did you get through all of that and stay sober?
Yeah. Well, I walked into my first meeting with an understanding of God not being a good one. I had a lot of prejudices around religion and God and how exclusive it was. It was never inclusive.
Right.
I knew what I had done. God knew what I'd done. He didn't want anything to do with me when I
Right.
walked into AA.
Right.
And they told me, you know, it triggered so many things because they pass a basket. And I was like, who's getting the money, you
Yeah,
know?
for sure.
And they talked about God. And it immediately, you know, the way I look at it is I was in so much pain that I was willing to be just a little bit open-minded to the rest of it, to the spiritual aspect of the program. And they suggested, if you don't want to drink today, ask God for help. And my first prayer was so uncomfortable and so unnatural, but that's what I did. And that is the shift. That's what got me through.
This is crazy. What you're saying, that it's pretty relatable, but I'm doing this, telling this for the listener, where was sitting in the middle of that room and hearing everybody's story was so amazing for me. I only did 2 meetings because I was somewhat similar to you, except I didn't have any relationship with God. The second they told me, you're not strong enough to do this, you need to give yourself up to your higher power, I was like, I'm out.
It's a big ask.
I got myself in this mess. I'm going to get myself out.
Exactly.
But the great thing about it was seeing everything. Oh my God, I can do this. You know, like, you're just as messed up as me. And what you said earlier was you're supposed to talk about those bad things.
Right.
Yeah.
The second I was able to do that and be honest with my wife and my mom and dad,
Everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and that goes through every aspect of life. You know, it's communication.
yeah,
You know, and it's just like, I don't know, like healthy communication and good communication is obviously better than the alternative. So,
But can we all agree though that when we were drinking in those spots, it was so hard to expose that? Was it easy? Okay, well, I'm gonna ask you this: was it easier for you to just drink it away?
for sure.
Right.
Yeah. But I think too, to answer, like, I was at such a place, like, I was at a catalyst, I guess, basically in my life, you know, where it's like, okay, if you go down this road, if you keep drinking, you're going to end up alone and probably dead, you know, or you can go down there. And that's just the way my mind works. So for me, dude, it wasn't, and I've always been a pretty honest person. Like, I feel like the vulnerability those kinds of things kind of come naturally for me. Like,
Mhm.
and I think I've just fucked up so many things in my life and I've had to admit
Mhm.
wrong so many times that I just got good at it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it was like, it was more for me. It was like, I was tired of being under a microscope, and I think that that was why it was so hard for me, because it was like, oh, here we go. It's just one more thing
Mhm.
that I've got to deal with, one more
Mhm.
thing in my personality that's fucked up, And so I think that part of it for me was hard
Mhm.
because I just felt like a project for so long
Mhm.
for other people. But it was also my fault because I was an open book,
Mhm.
and I was constantly making these mistakes that were very easy to point your finger at and be like, that's the problem.
Mhm.
Like you just punched a hole in the wall. That's a fucking problem.
Yeah.
And so it's like any other involvement from anybody else in those arguments, those fights, anything like that got completely overridden and forgotten because what I did was so extreme. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I had an exact opposite experience
Okay.
because I didn't recognize it at the time, but I was very much feeling abandoned.
Okay. Yeah.
And if the way I looked at it is if anybody found out who and what I really was, then they would absolutely leave
Yeah,
me.
totally.
So I would, at all costs, I was a chameleon.
Yeah.
In the 90s, if somebody was wearing Doc Martens, I would talk to them about Pearl Jam. Oh, yeah, they're my favorite band.
Right.
If they were wearing cowboy boots, hell yeah, Alan Jackson.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Or whatever,
Yeah.
Sawyer Brown.
No, actually, that was pretty good.
Thanks.
Yeah, that
Thanks.
was a
I
good
should
one.
have stopped there.
Did you ever come across the Chinko kids?
No.
Are you
Oh.
bringing up motherfucking Jinkos again?
Oh, Janko?
Jinko, yeah.
Dude.
No, I never got a pair, but I know what you're talking about. I was not.
It's like the 7th time he's brought it. And every time it just brings me back to 6th grade. My mom used to send me to school in these stupid pants
Mm.
with Lunchables that would literally fit in the back
perfect.
pocket.
Wait, your mom got you Jinkos?
Yeah, bro.
Rad.
I know. My mom was the shit. She was awesome when we were kids.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
she was
great.
fun.
My mom,
I mean,
refused
she's still
the
awesome.
Jinkos.
Yeah,
We were
I
going
never
to do
got
it.
a pair either.
We were going to do it anyways. I think my mom saw that in our personalities, my brother and I, early. Because, like, dude, when I was 18, she was like, if you pierce your lip, I'm going to fucking kill you. I went out that day and did it. It was just like kind of a joke. Like, we knew she wasn't going to do anything about it.
Yeah, you're still alive.
Yeah. So, anyways, but
Oh,
Good.
I wanted to ask you a question. You said you knew who God was. Like you had a relationship, or at least you had some education on that.
I knew there was a God. I've never doubted that there was a God.
Prior to AA, what did that look like for you? Like what was God? What was that relationship like?
I can best describe it as a similar feeling towards Santa Claus.
Okay.
Like I ask for what I want.
Right.
But if I'm not good, I'm not going to get it.
Okay.
And, being in jail and being like, look at what God did to me.
Yeah.
Not being able to look at things exactly the way they were.
Did you use it
because I was
as a
lying
scapegoat?
myself.
God? Did you use God as a scapegoat?
No, I don't think so. I just knew that he was not proud of me and was not happy with me. And I was just on the list.
What did you learn about God at? What was your experience through and after AA?
So
did that change?
At the beginning, so the fact that I had a couple of experiences where I had been practicing praying, and when I felt like drinking, I'd be like, God, please help me, stay away from the first drink, or whatever it looked like. It was very simple. And I had never been able, once I had started drinking, I had never been able to stay sober more than 3 days. And I had like 8 days.
Yeah, it's a huge
and then I
deal.
just kept doing that. And for me, it was much more realistic. Like I would try it. I would be willing to try it. I didn't really know if it was going to work.
Right.
But then when it worked, it's kind of hard to doubt the evidence that's laid out in front of you.
And that's what I try to explain to people, my kids, my wife, like God is almost like an emotion. You know what I mean? But it's like super intense.
Yeah.
And it's just this feeling that you get, or, this unexplainable instance that happens in your life, that just leads you in this positive direction.
Yeah. For me, and I'm not religious. I'm not. I say God because it's easier for others to understand.
Yeah.
But God to me is that feeling when you're on top of a mountain
Yeah.
and everything is quiet and you can hear the little squirrels and, the trees and the wind.
It's like it's just extreme clarity.
When you look at a starlit night, when you're away from the city light and you can see it, like, how could this all be created, without a God?
Right.
So that's what God is to me. Somebody, like how I view my own children. Like, I want the very best for them and I want to give them all the tools to be successful. That's what God is to me. And it's been an evolution for sure.
Yeah, totally.
I just peace amongst the turmoil, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think that there was a lot of, and I don't necessarily think it was anybody's like specific fault, but I just feel like 80s, 90s, like I grew up where people really twisted God and the intentions, and it was just like, it was very much like, hey, you have to do these things, right? Like, God is going to be mad at me if I don't fold my hands during prayer, stand up, sing really loud, raise my hands at church during praise and worship. Like, it was all this acts based, platform, and you had to perform, in the church we went to, you had to perform. And it was weird, man. Like, so that was like my experience with Christ. It was very, in my sense, what I call religious, and it's like my childhood was super Old Testament. And I feel like my adulthood is like spiritual. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's where it's like, I've heard so many people just say, oh, I don't believe in God because, my mom told me X and she said that God hated me, and so it's like, that sucks, like, that's not God. Like, I hate to see people get driven away from that by a human that twisted it and hurt somebody, so I was just curious, but so AA was a huge part of how you got sober, and you still are a part of it today.
Still, yeah. There are certain things about the AA experience that I don't always appreciate. Totally. There's a thing that they talk about, principles before personalities, and that is a real life thing.
Yeah.
I've been super involved at the beginning of my sobriety. I was super involved. I was a treasurer of the group. I was the secretary of the district. I was kind of a big deal. It's like being sitting at the cool kids table at the mental hospital.
Totally, man. I love it. Right?
You're like look at me. How did I survive so long?
Backseat on the short bus.
Yeah, exactly. That's what that is. Yeah. But the reason, and it's been several years that it's been this way. I don't go to AA for myself.
Yeah.
I go just in case there's a person in that room that is just like me that needs to hear what I have to say.
Wow.
And how I say it.
Right.
That keeps me coming back, because I feel like for me, it would be very selfish to take the gift and not be willing to pass it on to somebody else.
Totally. I completely agree with you. I mean, that's why we're doing this podcast, because that's really all we were trying to do. Cause is just highlight those different ways.
Yeah. The quality of my sobriety, I can tell you at this point, because I've had moments of my sobriety that have been probably tied for worst experiences when I was drunk, but I stay sober through it.
Right.
But the quality of my sobriety depends on my relationship with God and my ability to show up for other people.
Totally.
And be of service to them. So if I'm what I struggle with is like, sometimes I get into self-pity, like,
totally.
Gosh, I'm so weird. I'm not like everyone else. I worked in real estate. Like, that is weird to be sober. It's, you're not participating in what everyone else is participating in. But it's never been an issue. Like, I just show up where I need to show up and help who I need to help. And it's no big deal.
And it's almost, I think it's a human responsibility. Like, if you experience something like that's so life-changing, first of all, I think the number one thing that any normal person is going to think about is, how do I shout this from the top of a mountain? But then that's always what I liked about AA, right? It's like, go through these steps, fix yourself. And then the second you're done with that, turn around.
Right.
You know, you turn around and you help the next person. And that there's also that piece of, you're saying like, I can get in these modes of self-pity and those kinds of things. When you do that, who are you thinking about?
Myself.
Exactly.
My favorite subject.
Exactly. But when you go and you are at those meetings and you're
Mhm.
looking for that person, that who are you thinking about?
Them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, once you start to remove yourself from the
Yes.
equation, everything changes.
Yes.
Your whole mindset changes,
Absolutely.
you know? And so it's like, I realized at the beginning of sobriety, it's all about you, right? Like, you have to fix what's going on upstairs. And once that's fixed, then it's a totally different game.
Well, that's an interesting thought, because I would like to elaborate on a different perspective.
Okay.
I feel like alcoholism is alive and well in my brain.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
in my thinking. That's where it centers. And there's a quote from Albert Einstein that I'll botch, but it's like, you cannot fix a problem or solve a problem with the problem.
Okay. I like this.
So if I'm relying upon myself and my thinking where my disease lies,
I know.
I have to, in order, it's not thinking my way into better living. It's living my way into better thinking.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So,
and I guess, and you're absolutely right. Like, you probably attached yourself to somebody at the beginning that was directing you and guiding you, like, hey, because at that point in time, like, I didn't even pick the rehab facility that I went to.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I was like, I told my brother, I'm like, man, I'll sign a power of attorney. Like, you just choose. Like, I don't trust what's going on upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess and what I meant by my comment is, like, it is at that point all about fixing what's going on in you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And yes, your thinking, your perspectives have got you to that point. Mm-hmm. So those are the things that need to change.
Yeah.
For sure. And I love the way that you said that. Like, will you say that again?
Yes. I always thought I could think my way into better living,
right.
but it was backwards, and I needed to live my way into better thinking. So
yeah.
taking actions where, you know, the best thing I can do when I'm feeling sorry for myself or whatever is going on is I will try and seek out to be aggressively helpful to anybody that I'm around.
Exactly.
It has nothing to do with drinking. I'm at the grocery store. There's a little old lady, and I'm like, let me help you reach all that stuff, even though I'm not that tall.
No.
You know,
dude, and there's something that happens when you do that, right? Like, that just fills your soul.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yes, and it gets me out of my head.
Totally.
And onto that I'm not the only person on the planet, and a lot of people have it a lot worse, and that I actually have something to help other people with.
Right. Great. Being grateful.
Being grateful.
And content. You know, that's something I think that my family, my wife and I are going through right now, is just trying to be content, you know, and not keep up with the Jones. And, you know, like, God gave us what we have, and we're very blessed, and, you know, just to focus on that and be okay with that.
I wish I posted something this morning, just this video of comparing yourself to all the influencers and stuff on social media, you know, like, and that's something that I want to get twisted on. What we're doing here is it's easy for us to sit here and say this, you know, but what I want anybody listening to, like, I think let me rephrase it. One thing it's really hard to do is, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I hear that a lot, and that makes me it bothers me.
Why?
Because when I was in those spots, I was so far away from thinking that sobriety was possible.
Right.
I had all the shit going on, dealing with stuff, and I had to wake up early to go drink. Like, that was my thing. I had to wake up at 5 o'clock every day so I can get my alcohol in. And the thought of that is so hard to fathom. So what
now, being so far removed from it?
No, then.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
So I think where your perspective is really good, and why having everybody on and telling their story from beginning to end is important, because it's going to give hope.
Yeah.
We're going to meet everybody in different spots of their journey.
Right.
And so I'm not really sure where I'm going with that, but I think it was comparing yourself where you're at now to other people, like moms posting those things about how organized their pantry is. And like, in 2 weeks, it's going to look different. So stop trying to compare yourself to someone you're not.
Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah. Totally. Be where you're at and be with content with it.
Well, and that's what I like about this, you know, and it's like, obviously it's hard not to do that, right? To play the comparison game, especially in the day and age that we live in with social media. I mean, it's a perfect platform for that. But at the same time, it's like, I think people are drawn to authenticity, you know? And so it's and vulnerability. Like, that's one thing I'm realizing through all of this is like, you know, this is as raw, in my opinion, as it gets.
And that's what we're doing.
Right.
It's not the perfect Instagram
Yeah,
fridge.
it's not supposed to be, you know. It's supposed to be grungy. It's supposed to be broken. You know, it's supposed to be imperfect, you know, because that's who we are. You know, and that's what God created us to be, right? And it's like, if we can't learn from our failures, then what's the point?
Right.
There's no perfect sober person.
Yeah. And that's why my sobriety today is one of my favorite parts about who I am, you know, because it's given me the opportunity to look at myself on a level that honestly I feel like is very uncommon. And, you know, break myself down in a way that, again, I think is really uncommon. People do it physically all the time. Athletes do it physically all the time, but we don't do it with our brains and our minds, you know? And so, and I think that's what this is. So that's awesome. I love that comment. That's so true, you know, and to mix those two things together, like, yeah, you just have to get with somebody that can help you make good decisions. And eventually, over that course of making those good decisions, your mindset is going to change.
Well, I'll tell you what. So, one of the things that I picked up pretty early on, and I do not represent Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I'm just a member, and you know, there's so many different ways to get sobriety.
Totally.
And I encourage and honor all different paths.
Right.
But in the very beginning, where I had to live my way into better thinking, was every time I wanted to lie, I would tell the truth. And that was a totally different experience.
Dude, that's cool, man. Yeah, for sure.
And that is how you live your way into better thinking is, you know what? I mean, it's just common sense.
Right.
If you want to be able to look yourself in the mirror when you're brushing your teeth, I found myself in a time in my life where I couldn't even look myself in the eye, let alone anybody else. If you're not lying and being a chameleon and you're being authentic and having integrity, no matter how uncomfortable or ugly it might be, you lose those feelings that for me probably led to feeling better once I took a drink.
Right.
So that allowed me the space to be able to be like, you know what? God did put me in this space right here, and I'm a vessel for other people.
Totally.
So how am I supposed to help somebody else when I'm not doing it myself? You know, there's the accountability piece too.
Yeah, totally. You know, and that's one thing that I was thinking about this the other day, you know, because we talk a lot about vulnerability and personal accountability and things like that. And I mean, even in my episode that I recorded, I found myself blaming my parents, you know, for where I was at. And I had this realization of like, no, dude, like if you're going to get on a microphone and tell people like, hey, this is what is required, then you need to figure, and you need to take accountability for all of these things in your heart, you know? And it was crazy. I can't even really pin it to anything outside of that, but my mindset changed, right? I was able to rationalize this way of thinking and be like, no, dude, this is stupid. Like, you're thinking the wrong way. And so I was honest, you know, and I even told my dad, I was like, hey man, like, I'm really sorry that I harbored these resentments. Like, this was not your fault, you know, and the release that you get, it was instantaneous. Yeah. And this whole time, even through sobriety up until like a month ago, I'm thinking that it's his fault. You know what I mean? And it's like, and I'm justified. And if you would have talked to me a month ago, I probably wouldn't have seen it, you know? And it was just like, you have these moments of clarity and, but then it's doing something about it, like you said, you know, and acting on it and acting in the right way.
Right.
You know, so that's really cool.
You know, one of my favorite stories about you is, you should tell it, but talk about personal accountability. What would happen right now if alcohol, like if you just accidentally picked up alcohol or something like that, what would happen? The Vegas story.
Oh yeah. So, I was in Las Vegas playing slots, and I ordered a Diet Coke, and I was sitting there, I was going to win big, of course,
Yeah, absolutely.
because God loves me and one of his favorite children. Anyway, just kidding. I no longer have an ego.
Dude, my arrogance is like, beep, 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 beep.
I know. Next episode, we can talk about humility.
There we go.
Book
That's
it out
probably
for
good.
a few hours.
That's probably a good idea.
But anyway, I was sitting there, and as soon as that glass went to my nose, I smelled Jack Daniels like nobody's business, and I just like threw it to the side, and it scared me because I was like, oh my God, that was so close.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was like, oh my gosh, I could have drank that and gotten away with it, and it wouldn't have been my fault. And I didn't even think about it. It was like poison, and I knew it, and I just ran away from it, and then
That's
aggressively smelled every single drink that I've gotten ever since.
I when we're at parties and stuff, my wife will hand me a drink, and she's done it by mistake, had me the wrong one, but dude, I can smell alcohol a mile away.
Yeah, it's true.
My wife can have a half a drink, and I'm like, hey, you been drinking?
Yeah.
She's like, are you serious?
I know.
So yeah, but
it's really fun for the drinkers in our lives.
Yeah. And you know what? This is one thing that I've been wanting to bring up is like, how do you not come across as a douchebag?
Sober?
Yes. Like, you know what? Like, I don't want people to think that I'm holier than thou. Like, I'm just very excited about where I'm at in my life and my heart, like the freedom that I've experienced. Yeah. And so it's like, I want to share that. But at the same time, like, I find people like explaining their drinking to me, and I'm like, dude, I don't give a shit what you're doing. Like, that's awesome. If you can balance it, more power to you. But I feel like it's hard sometimes to like come across like, my wife had a drink. She was probably fine, but she drove home, and I'm like, dude, why? That's stupid. I'm here. I'm sober. Like, we can figure it out, and it's just, I don't know. So it's really hard for me sometimes not to come across like I'm better than you, So I don't know if you guys have experienced that at all.
8 years, I'm still feeling the exact same way. Yeah. I'm like cautious of what I say,
right?
Because I feel like she dealt with so much of that, that I just dance around it, like
Sure. But hard. I just, it's like I'm very jealous of the people that can balance it in their life, and manage it well.
Yeah, that's one of the pieces to the puzzle that I don't know if a lot of people talk about is how do you interact with society that alcohol is very, very important as a central focus in a lot of cases. And how do you show up in that as I'm sober?
Right.
And for me, the most annoying thing ever. So I sobered up November 10th, and then my boyfriend's huge Catholic family was coming to Denver to have Thanksgiving dinner like 14 days later. And I was cooking Thanksgiving dinner for the very first time in a 700 square foot house with 5 extra people. And I was freshly sober. And the most offensive thing that those lovely people did was they brought me a bottle of sparkling cider. And they brought wine and beer and this bottle of, they're like, here, we brought this for you. And I was like, the fuck is that? Why did you bring me that? What a terrible gift. Sorry.
No, you're fine, dude. Yeah.
But that's what, I didn't say it out loud, but that's what I was feeling. I was like I'm a child.
Yep.
Like, so that's how it started. And I learned how to navigate that. And honestly, my sobriety, I think, makes other people more uncomfortable than it ever does me.
Yeah.
In the beginning, I was around people that had drank with me. And when they said, what are you drinking? And I'm like, Diet Coke or water or whatever. And they'd say, why aren't you getting a drink? And I would say, well, because I don't drink. Why don't you drink? And then I would say, well, because I'm an alcoholic. Oh, you are not.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I don't say that anymore. So when people get pushy, and I know that's not what you were talking about,
right.
But when people got pushy about it, I would just say, I'm allergic. And they go, oh. And I'd say I break out in handcuffs. So I just did it last night. I was at a chamber event, business after hours, because I want to soften it. And so the best way to do that is to, you know what? yeah, let's call it out, and I will make a joke and make everybody laugh so that they know that I'm not uncomfortable with them drinking in front of me.
Right. And
This is so important.
Yeah, it's huge, man. Like, and I'm genuinely asking for myself because, my journey is not super mature.
Mhm.
And so it's something that I'm seeing, and I love that because I found that that's probably the best way is like, dude, I don't care what you do. And my thing is to be like, man, I'm actually more envious of like your situation but really in reality, I'm not,
Right.
like
Yeah.
I love where I'm at.
I have a couple of comebacks that I have learned over time that works.
Yeah.
That's one of them. It
That's
adds
good.
humor. Another one is, I don't know, do you have bail money?
Those are good, man. I gotta write some of these down.
What's really great about it is that the pressure or the questions stop.
Yeah, totally.
Because they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. This is kind of blow them away with something extreme.
Yeah.
I think this is kind of nice too, because this is the time of year for this. I mean, we got Christmas parties, Thanksgiving parties, all that.
Yeah.
One thing that worked for me in the beginning was I would just go to the bar and get a soda, but have them ask him put it in a rocks glass.
Yeah.
Or just an iced tea or something in your hands to help, potentially dodge those questions altogether.
Yeah. Which and don't get me wrong, like I don't want to avoid those situations. No. You know what I mean? Like,
as you shouldn't.
Yeah. And that's it. I'd just rather figure out a better way to deal with it.
Yeah. So what I still do and what works for me is that I never go to one of those situations without my own wheels.
Yeah.
I always bring my own wheels because there has come times where I have been so wildly uncomfortable that I've had to leave. Otherwise, like just starting thinking that drinking might be fun because I can see normal people doing it.
Something happened. There we go.
Yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
No, it's okay. It's having your own wheels.
Yeah.
For me personally, I pray before I go into a situation that, God allows me the opportunity to be where I need to be and
Absolutely.
say what I need to say. And, the other thing too, I've heard a lot of people being uncomfortable being in a bar setting or a party without having something that looks like they're drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
And one thing that I would like to share with everyone is that nobody cares.
Yeah.
Nobody pays attention. Nobody cares. And at the end of the day, I feel like I have much more impact on people because I don't know who I might be able to help. If I'm drinking, for me personally, I don't judge anybody who drinks, non-alcoholic beer or anything, non-alcoholic wine. They have all sorts of different things.
I know,
now.
It's crazy.
And I don't judge it, but I personally don't imbibe in any of that because I feel like it's putting a mask. Like, why would I want to drink a beer if, like, I only drank because of the effect produced by alcohol, not because it tastes really great.
I mean, dude, at the end, I was drinking handles of gin.
Yeah.
So it's like I might as well just eat a fucking Christmas tree.
Yeah, you should probably not drink.
No, it was horrible. And it was like, anyway, it was, I'm going to go with
handles of gin?
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Like straight?
Yeah. Just like straight out of the bottle.
Man, that's a crazy thing when you're drinking for effect.
That's what it was, man. For years, And that's like, what are your thoughts on the sober curious thing?
What does that mean?
It's like apparently it's like a new movement, I guess, for like, from what I understand, it's kind of stay-at-home moms that maybe their kids are in school and they're struggling with probably drinking a little bit too much. So I just assumed that you knew what I was talking about because it's kind of like new. So my wife is a part of like a women's group that's pretty big nationally. I don't want to say the name, but they had a conference in Denver. And there was a speaker that talked, and it was huge on this whole sober curious thing.
Okay.
And it was kind of like, that situation where a bunch of moms are like, hey, instead of drinking, like we're just trying to make better decisions. And I was going somewhere with that, but I was just curious what your thoughts were because I feel like as a society, like maybe a generation, we're just kind of like, I think alcohol permeated our generation pretty dramatically.
I think our generation psyched out the younger one. Dude, I'm hearing from a lot of people like Gen Z-ish and the people that are turning 21 now are not interested as much as we were.
Yeah.
Opening up mocktail bars and things like that. It's amazing.
Yeah, my dear friend is opening Northern Colorado's first
I know. I'm super excited about
sober
that.
bar.
So we're actually starting a sober realtor group.
Nice.
And that's what I was going to see if you wanted to
I would
partner
love
up
to.
with.
Realtor or networking? Just in general? Networking?
Yeah, like just in the real estate space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I was thinking the other day, maybe a couple weeks ago, that it would be really cool to have a sober networking group.
Why not? You know,
Let's start one.
So they have rookie club. They have all these things for age. Like we could do education. We could do sober education. You know, it's a great platform for us to meet new people for this.
And based on that and what you guys are doing currently right now is making it okay, giving the space that it is acceptable to go to these events and choose not to drink, normalize sobriety.
And that's really all it is, man. Like, and because there's people that, I don't know, I think that the sober curious thing pisses them off. Okay. And where I was going with that is that I think there's two classes of people here in this sober movement, right? Like there's the us who our lives depend on not drinking.
Yeah.
You know, like we're so extreme that if we touch it, it could kill us.
Yeah.
But then I think there's a whole nother class of people that are like, hey, we're just doing this too much. You know, like it's just a little bit out of balance. I don't feel like I have the need to go to AA and do all of these things, you know, because I can just change my way of thinking.
They ask pretty extreme things. And if you're not on a life and death errand, are you going to really do it?
Right,
no.
Exactly.
I think it's great.
I do too.
I think whatever path anybody has to better themselves in any category, why the hell not?
Right.
You know, I would absolutely support that.
Yeah. And that's what I thought too. Like I'm just that kind of personality, you know, that I had to go through a little bit of a darker forest than some other people, you know?
Right. I think at one time they, I don't know if this is legitimate now or not, but the statistic was that only 1 out of 10 people are really alcoholic. You know, most people can drink without destroying their lives.
Right. And I just think it's just gotten a little out of control, you know?
Yeah. I think so too. Well, think about anything that you go and do. You go to a restaurant. Here's the wine list. I've gone to dinner with somebody before that was like, "Oh, we don't need that," and I'm like, "Oh my god, please, it's okay."
Well, and dude, the crazy thing is like when a drink is the same fucking price as an appetizer.
Yeah,
like one cocktail.
I don't even want to know how much.
Dude,
there's
I mean, it's like $18 fucking.
Oh my gosh!
You know, and it's
how much are beers now at bars?
If it's like
$7,
probably more than that if it's a craft beer.
Oh, man.
You know, if it's like hand brewed somewhere in Colorado, it's probably $12. I don't know. Like I haven't ordered a beer in over a year, but
even just looking at the financial benefits of having sober lifestyle, like
100%. Yeah. So I don't know. These are all just thoughts that I've had.
Absolutely.
You know, and I was just curious, but
yeah.
You were gonna say something?
No, I was just thinking. I was like, that's why. Never mind. I'm not gonna say it. I'll edit it out. But you guys are dumb. I stole all my alcohol.
Like, dude, I paid a shitload of money for it.
I have stolen someone's beer and helped them try and find it.
Oh my god, no way!
I give you a round of applause. Did you guys ever go? Did you guys ever go garage hopping? I wouldn't put it past you.
Well, I remember riding around with my grandpa once when I first turned 21. He lived in this retirement neighborhood. We'd hop on the golf cart. And we'd like go to people's garages. I'd be like, we'd drink. You know, we're just driving around the fort.
But you weren't stealing it from them. They were giving it to you.
No, I mean, we just go up to, oh, yeah, I know Bill. He just go up to his garage. You're empty. Grab 2 beers, and then away we go. So it's not really stealing. But
no, we straight up break into people's garages and like steal cases of alcohol.
No, I went through a klepto period of my life. It's what happens when you're broke.
Well, this is going to be redundant, but I worked at a golf course, and the beverage cart was down by one of our coolers. Mm-hmm. And so one day I'm like, oh, what's in there? Mm-hmm. Nice. You know, and then eventually there's a staff meeting with all the beverage cart girls. Like, we got to figure this out. Christy, on your shift, you lost like 6, and I was sitting at the end of the bar on the computer doing an order, and I'm like, shh. Sorry, girls.
Just ruining
Yeah.
16-year-old girls' lives.
Pull one out of my pocket and
Absolutely.
drink it.
And what baffles me is that I had this like feeling of entitlement.
Totally.
Like when it came to the police officers, they should have been arresting an actual real life criminal. They shouldn't have been messing with me because I really wasn't that bad. Like I had a different standard for myself than I held to everybody other
else.
person. So if I needed to steal a bottle of wine from the gas station, that's exactly what I did. And I didn't feel bad about it at all because it's me.
Because you need it.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, there's so many stories that I still struggle with the guilt of it, of survival of the fittest. I said that to myself so many times,
Yeah.
It justified some really nasty things.
Yeah, absolutely. I wrote hot checks all over Missoula, Montana. And, that's how I would get extra money. And the bar that I drank at, my check ended up on the cash register as don't accept this check. And then I was really screwed. But one of the parts of the process that I walked through is that I went to all of those places and I made amends. I said, hey, I don't know if I owe you money from this. I don't know if I paid it because I went to collections several times and lost track, and that bar owner looked at me and he was like, wow, I don't normally get this amount of respect. Thank you so much.
That's cool.
I went into gas stations and said, hi, this is going to sound a little bit weird, but about 5 years ago, I stole 2 packs of cigarettes because you had them on the counter and a couple bottles of wine. How can I make that right? And, often the amends process, the people would just look at me and they'd say, thank you for just telling me.
Yeah.
That's good. Like, how do you make that right?
Well, and I think we live in a world too, where it's, people are very dishonest, and so it's almost uncommon for people to do things like that, to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So that's really cool.
I don't like making amends. I liked getting through the process and I do not like making amends. So a lot of the time when given an opportunity to do something that doesn't fit right in my soul, I'm usually going to choose to do the right thing so I don't have to make amends because that will eat my lunch until it's corrected and I can put my feet squarely on the ground again. I'm
the exact same way, and it's hard sometimes too in my relationship with my wife. Like she's not that way, and so I've got to leave room for her personality, and it's tough, because I'm willing to admit whatever, like off the cuff. And it's like, I almost kind of expect that from her sometimes.
Yeah.
So, but she's, like in her mind, she's like, dude, like I didn't do anything wrong. Like, why would I apologize? And so, and I get that, but it can be tough.
It is tough.
Well, so dude, I just feel like that was awesome. Like, I just feel like you left so many little nuggets of wisdom there. Is there anything else that you want to add to this or leave or for the listener or?
Gosh, there's so many things,
I know.
I just ultimately, and no offense, but I like to tell people that ask that I am sober and that I'm a safe spot if they ever want to talk.
Totally.
Because I do believe that when you see proof that one person can do this one thing, that another person can do it. And if I can leave one nugget for anybody, it's that, anybody can live better.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're an alcoholic or if you're just going through a phase or whatever, if it's drugs, if it's eating, if it's whatever, that there's hope to shift things and live a better life and be more solid and enjoy life one day at a time, not to be cliche, but like this is the only day that we can do anything about. And today could be day one for anybody.
Yeah. I heard this the other day, which I used in a conversation with a friend, but he said, he's like, anybody gets to choose what their rock bottom is. Like that's a choice that we have. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to lose a child. You don't have to go through some insanely traumatic event to get sober. You just got to put your foot down and be like, look, enough is enough. And then surround yourself with people that are making those decisions already, and I love too, that you said like anybody can make changes in their life with the same process, right?
Mhm.
Like, it doesn't have to be an alcoholic. It doesn't even have to be a drug addict.
Mhm.
You know, you could be struggling with laziness in your business or whatever, you
Being
know,
on
and it's
Facebook
just,
too much.
yeah,
or
exactly. You know,
whatever.
it's just getting with people that understand the struggle
Mhm.
and have conquering that
Mhm.
struggle in their life, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really, I think that's amazing.
I think it's a kind of a good way to look at it too. And I think I'm just kind of rephrasing what I said in my head of it just seems so freaking far away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That makes
one,
sense.
you know, step at a time
Yeah.
or one little bit at a time, eventually
Mhm.
you get there.
Yeah. You know, and that's just life in general. You know,
Yeah.
you just got to take
Right.
life one bite at a time and
Right.
make your plans for the future. I'm not saying don't do that, you know, think about it, but don't live there,
Right.
you know, and don't live in the past either.
Right. And
Mm.
absolutely, I would sit in my early sobriety in a meeting and somebody would pick up a 5-year chip and I'd be like, I want that
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
that would be really awesome. And that would be really rad if I could have 5 years with 5 days.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, because it's a painful process.
Totally.
It's a hard process, but you know, little bits at a time.
And you see it, that dichotomy in so many facets of life, right? Like we all have to climb that mountain,
Mhm.
but even like the process of getting to diamonds, you know, is
Mhm.
like, it's crazy, you know,
Yeah.
it's brutal, it's hard, but the result is amazing and it's beautiful, you know, and valuable. So, and I think that that's something that we can apply in our lives too, you know.
Just the
Mhm.
power of a made up mind. You can
Yeah.
suffer through a lot when you're going to do this.
The last thing I want to say that you alluded a lot to, but is living outside of yourself, living for something that's bigger than yourself,
Mhm.
whatever that is,
Mhm.
you know, whether it's your neighbor, whether it's God, spirituality, you know, I don't care. Find something in your life that is bigger than you.
Mhm.
And I swear, man, that's the best thing that you can introduce in your life.
Agreed.
So, well, Desiree, I just want to say thank you so much for your wisdom, your time, and for 22 years of sobriety. I'm so grateful for who you are today.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're
Thank you.
amazing. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to
Absolutely.
be here. I am so excited to see where you guys take this beautiful thing that you've created. It's amazing.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to turn it over to Aaron to let us know where you can find all our handles and stuff.
Yeah. One before that, where can, if I need my house clean, where do I go? Who do I call? Like, how do we get in touch with you to help you out?
We are on the interwebs at
www.
thebetterdayway.com.
The Better Way.
The Better Day. I'll take
Start
it from
over.
Here. The betterdayway.com. It's WAY.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, yeah, for all of us listening to, make sure you're following us on Instagram, Shattered Darkness NoCo, YouTube, Shattered Darkness Podcast, and Apple Music and Spotify.
And then if you guys want to, we'll probably take a little bit of a break after the first of the year. We're going to be releasing our first episode between Christmas and New Year's. So look out for that. And then if you guys like this and you have a story that you want to share, reach out to us. shatterdarkness5@gmail.com. We'd love to sit down with you and see if you could be a good fit for the podcast. Also, one thing that we're going to introduce soon, I don't know when, but we're going to start answering questions. I want to get like some interactive feedback from our listeners. So if you guys are listening to this and you have some questions that you want us to answer while we're recording, go ahead and shoot those to us at our email at shatterdarkness5@gmail.com.
Or message us on Instagram,
Yeah,
too.
you can do that too. So we just thought that would be something that was kind of fun and could be a good way to answer some questions that maybe you guys have going on in your lives too. So anyways, thank you again, Desiree. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks.
And thank you guys for listening.
Love it.
That was good.
Good job, guys.
You